appointed him to the claims court in 1883, and he was still there in 1905 when he passed away. So by 1897, we do know that Judge Weldon planned to put in something there in the park. He said it would be a good location for a hotel, camping, and is less than 3/4 mile from Salt Creek, where good fishing can be had. But since he was spending so much time in Washington, D.C., he was not available to do a lot of this. He thought that he would have his efforts joined by Jacob Ziegler, who owned the land next to his. Jacob was a businessman, and I couldn't figure out what an astute businessman was. That's all John Dawson tells us. But now I do know. He came here as a very young man. He came to Normal, Illinois, and he worked for Judge David Davis. He was the land manager in the county, and he bought all the land and took care of the land for Judge Davis. And they became very close friends. And Davis was a person that he wanted to make money, but he wanted to help the land clear to the Weldon Springs Road and even west of the Weldon Springs Road. So he owned a lot. He was a farmer there, but he also served in the state legislature. He was in charge of the friend of Judge Weldon, and so Judge Weldon hoped he would join him in this program to do this, but Jacob didn't. But he did discover the second spring at Weldon Springs. He cemented it up, and he built the wooden staircase up to that spring. And when the company was formed, there was a company then that asked to lease the land from Judge Weldon, and they sold 200 shares of stock at $50 a share. That gave them $10,000, and they built the lake, they built the dam, they paid Judge Weldon $4 plus the taxes. They received a charter, but they had to spend at least $1,000 a year on the improvements. There would be no alcoholic beverages ever allowed there at the park. So by 1898, that Jacob Ziegler then was the general manager of the Chautauqua Association in 1901. He was also a promoter of the Weldon Springs Park, which was under his supervision. And so Jacob didn't join him as a partner, but he did have a lot to do with the Chautauquas. The first Chautauqua was on August 6, 1901. Colonel Vespasian Warner was the opening speaker for the Chautauqua. He talked about herding sheep in his youth under those trees in the unflooded lake bed. Probably Judge Weldon never attended a Chautauqua. He wasn't at that one, and we have no record of him ever attending because he was in Washington, D.C. And since this was 1901, and Weldon passed away by 1905, so he probably never attended anything there. At that time, Lincoln, his son, was involved with this. They did have a pavilion at that time that helped to open the first Chautauqua. When they were putting gas into the steamer, Fred Ziegler was on it. That was Jacob Ziegler's son. And the steam launch exploded, and they had to jump off, but did survive. Also, before the first Chautauqua, a couple of people had drowned in the lake at that time. On opening day, they had 1,000 people. They had $100, $150 in revenue, 125 tents. By Sunday of the first Chautauqua, they had 7,000 to 8,000 people. The receipts totaled $3,700 for 10 days. Now, Chautauqua, if you don't know, is a tent meeting. It's for educational purpose, it's religious purposes. If you brought your own tent, you got the lot for free. If you had to rent a tent, just a rent was $2.50 to $5. A compartment tent was $6 to $9. If you just had a small tent, it could be 75 cents to $1.75. Season tickets were $1.50 if you just went one day, and it was 15 cents for a round trip from Bloomington. The trains were coming in from Champaign, Bloomington, and then other places too. One of the problems they had was that the lots were 18 foot. Some people had bigger tents, so there could be a problem then over the boundaries of the tents. Now the prices were low, and they did stay pretty stable until later on, the second decade. And that was when the war started, and they did start charging a war tax. So they did cost a little bit more. Now, that was, my grandfather lived there on the north side. I don't know if you remember, but the entrance to Weldon Springs was on the north side. It wasn't where it is now. And so when I say the entrance, I always think of the north side, because I grew up right there. And the trains came in right there on the track. And it was about a half mile down to the Chautauqua. And that was the biggest complaint from people, that they didn't want to walk a half mile and carry everything down there. And they thought the Illinois Central should put a spur in there and take them down there. Eventually they got hacks or cabs, that took them down there. The Chautauquas were quite a thing. The big tent was the first auditorium, and then within about 4 years they had a bigger auditorium that was made out of steel. But they had a headquarters tent, a dining hall tent, a barber shop, a refreshment tent. They had a grocery store. They had ice. They had gasoline. They had bread. They had police there, a post office, an information center, a telephone station, a check room, a physician's tent, feed yards for the livestock, motion picture exhibits. And one lady said the ironing board was the most important thing that you had, because it acted as the dining room table or storage. Weather was sometimes a problem with the Chautauquas. One year the tents didn't arrive, so they had to get tents from someplace else. People would cancel sometimes. The dam burst in 1911 to 1915. And the Willises that live right south of Weldon Springs threatened them and said, if the dam ever bursts again, we're going to sue you. So they fixed it. It didn't break again. The new auditorium then held 5,000 people and opened in 1904. Okay. In 1901, there were 400 Chautauquas in the U.S., but by 1918, there were 6,000. But the one at Weldon Springs was one of the ones that was the best in the United States. Some of the speakers they had there in 1908, Adlai Stevenson, who had been vice president, 1909, Carrie Nation from the Temperance League. 1912, President William Howard Taft, who was president at that time. 1913, William Jennings Bryan, who was an orator and a politician. 1915, Helen Keller. William Jennings Bryan and Reverend Sam Jones, they wanted to put hotels there, hospitals, and so talk that they would have to discontinue the Chautauqua. And by the second decade, there were a lot of improvements. They had Delco lighting system there. You could have electricity. You had to be quiet all day. And there was church in the morning, and nothing could interfere with the devotional activities during the day. The end of the ones that had been doing this were getting older, so they probably didn't have the people to continue on with the Chautauquas. There was a lot of competition by then. People had automobiles. They could go to motion pictures and do different things. So the last Chautauqua was held in 1922 at the park, and it was an opera company that came, but the people enjoyed it. And then in 23, it was held in Clinton, and for some reason that was the end of it. Sometime when the land was first purchased, probably in the 1880s, Ferris Sullivan built a house there, a residence there, north of the park. This is actually Ed Sullivan's land, or it turned out the son, it became Ed Sullivan's. It was a small house. It's still out there. That's the house Dave Herzog lived in. Nobody knows for sure when the house was on the railroad. It was a Sears house from the Chicago World's Fair. And he built the house there. He used a Delco battery for electricity, just like they did at the homestead, just like the C.H. Moore house. They had running water because they pumped the water up, or they had a tank, and then used gravity flow for the bathrooms. So they had water, they had electricity. There weren't a lot of homes like that around here. So the homestead and probably the Ziegler one might have been the only one in the Clinton area. After Ferris Sullivan and Lincoln Weldon were the ones then that kind of took care of the park. Then the Chautauquas were gone, and attendance did drop. But you still had the Boy Scouts out there. You had family reunions. You had fishermen. Ed's son was a top swimmer, so they had 2 diving platforms. They had Easter sunrise service out there, the Farm Bureau picnic, and later the 4-H fair was held out there. There were a lot of livestock out there. And after that, they moved the 4-H fair to Pharma City, and then later out here to the fairgrounds. But so there were still a lot of people attending, but not like there was with the Chautauquas. In 1936, the city of Clinton accepted the 50 acres from Lincoln and Weldon.
You have a call on line 1. Logan, line 1.
Lincoln had left the 40 acres and added 10 acres to it. And he left it then to the city of Clinton. The city of Clinton purchased a 17-foot strip from the Zieglers. By then it was J. Frank Ziegler and Vera Ziegler. They did not live on the property. J. Frank had worked for Scully, was that? Which is a big land group. Stephanie tells me they're still around too. And so he lived in Dwight, Illinois. But the WPA came in and worked on the park, And then they later added more land, another 60 foot there. And that's probably where the old entrance came in, was at that time. And the WPA worked on the pavilion, the shelters, the sanitary system, the concrete spillway. They put in a newer pavilion, and some of you probably remember the new pavilion, the concrete pavilion, which we have a picture of it in the schoolhouse if you don't remember it. I remember it as a kid because we went out there, we had reunions, we had parties out there, and it was a really nice building. The lake shore then it went from 1 mile to 3 miles. The lake is 29 acres. The average depth was 19 foot, the maximum 28. They stocked the lake with game fish too. By 1948, then, the city of Clinton sold the park to the state of Illinois. It became a state park in 1955 that was managed by the Department of Natural Resources. They did have a garage shop there that was built in 1954 that's still out there. The auditorium, though, was dismantled in 1955. Some of you may remember that auditorium up on the hill, the Chautauqua part. I don't remember it. The concrete was there until '66. I remember the concrete because people would go out and skate on it and do things on that concrete, but I don't remember the building. They had electricity all through the park then by 1949 too. Now, Bill Ziegler, who was a son of J. Frank Ziegler, there were two children. Bill Ziegler, who lived here for a long time, he lived on one of the houses on the farm. Until then, it was all my family, my aunts and uncles. There were 3 houses on the farm, and it was all Spragues on the farm. But then my aunt and uncle moved to Florida, the ones that were in the big house, the one like the homestead, and Ray Lampkin moved into that house. And then Bill Ziegler moved into the one on the west side. Dave Cornell lives there now. So that house is still there. And at one time, Bill Ziegler started a fun park there at the entrance to the park. It had a little train, and since I was close by and a kid, that was my favorite thing, was to walk down to the fun park. I think it only lasted about 2 years. Very few people remember that. But when I spoke to the DAR, one lady afterwards came up to me and said, my grandfather made that train. And she said I have a picture of it, and it was in the Lincoln paper. And so I wasn't dreaming it. That fun park was there. Now, Ed Sullivan owned that strip between the Ziegler land and the park, and my brother and sister-in-law lived in one of the houses. He brought in 2 houses there. So at one time there were 3 houses at the entrance to Weldon Spring. My niece was born when Charlie and Nancy lived in that one house. That was in 1964 that they lived there. Bud Fatherly lived there after them, and Bertram and Judy Sullivan lived in the north house. There was another house there. And that house was later moved out, and Charlie and Nancy's house was burnt down. My brother paid $50 a month to rent that house from Ed Sullivan. So, but then when the state bought it, things did change. In 1969, the state bought 250 acres from the Dials, but it was because they threatened to use eminent domain. and they got all the bottom land. In 1970, Ed Sullivan then sold the Ranger residence out there to the state. The North House was then torn down. The Fatherys lived in the other house at that time, and it was burnt. And then they also got 65 acres to the south that came from the Willis family. The park was getting in really bad shape by then. The concession stand had been burnt down in 1976, 77, and Dave Herzog came here. He was blessed with this job, or we say we were blessed with Dave Herzog, because he became superintendent in 1977. Even at that time, and the park was 370 acres, but even at that time, there was almost 500,000 visitors a year in that park. 9,541 campers. On the weekends, lots of times they would have 8,000 people on a 2-day weekend. And all funds that were generated from that park go to Springfield, still today. They all go to Springfield. But not all that money comes back, lots of times. So because of this, Dave Herzog thought he needed some help in that park. So he went to every group in town trying to get volunteers, trying to get people to help. In 1979, he got a few people. It was the Weldon Springs Advisory Board then was formed. It only lasted from July to September. Then they changed it. There were 7 of them, 7 members. They changed it to the Weldon Springs Auxiliary Board. Ed Willett was chairman. Betty Klein was secretary. The historian was Rodney Carr. The Auxiliary Board did do some things there, and at that time the Youth Conservation Corps came in too, and they did do new decking on the boat dock, trail renovation, they cleared brush, they put up picnic tables, and so the Auxiliary Board did do some things. Ed Willett actually started the Bluebird Trail out there. He had 10 bluebird houses. Betty Adcock was the one that started the first prairie restoration out there. It was 1 acre on Lookout Point. They did get a new concession then in 1981, and later on they did start Chautauqua Days, where they had canoe rides, they had music out there, craft shows, all kinds of entertainment, the fishing derby, chess tournament. Marion Swigert used to do the bird walks. Marcia Wright was the first summer interpreter out there. That's Patty's job now. So they decided, though, or rather Dave Herzog decided, that he needed a group that was not under the control of the state of Illinois. So they started the foundation, which is a 501c3 through the federal government. The first president was Betty Klein. Yuba Hahn was the secretary, Jim Miller, the treasurer, Bill Smith, the lawyer, the legal representative. The trustees were Aurora Brown, Yuba Hahn, Terry England, Monica DeGrowley, Rodney Carr, Jim and Betty Klein, Becky McCauley, which was Betty's daughter, Jim Miller, Lesser Oakley, and Norma Sams. So I imagine many of you know some of those people, because I even know a lot of those people. The first president for the foundation was Norma Sams in '84, but then Carol Thompson was the president in '85. She started the newsletter Once Around the Park, and she was dedicated to that park. She gave her life to that park, really. And in 1987, they moved the schoolhouse in. The schoolhouse was built by a Union soldier coming home from the Civil War. It was over by Chestnut. The foundation moved at 28 miles. And it houses materials there. Carol worked there. She did her writing there. She hosted field trips. She also went into the schools with the materials from the schoolhouse and worked with students in the schools. The bell out there came from the DeWitt schoolhouse because all the rural schoolhouses had been closed by then. I taught at Kinney, and it was the last one, and it was closed in 1976. So all those were gone. The Texas Town Hall, which is the Science Nature Center, was out down on 51. My mother actually voted in that building because that was down by Maroa, but it's still Texas Township. And it was brought in 1995. The entrance changed in the late 90s to the entrance that's out there now. And Stephanie told me in 1995, the Davenport land was added. That was 37 acres, and Stephanie Davenport lived in a trailer on that land. And Steve did fight the state of Illinois for 10 years, trying to keep that land, but he lost, and they took that land by eminent domain, and that's where they put the new entrance. The Hartsock land also was taken, 35 acres. In 1987, Family Circle listed Weldon Springs as one of the top 20 campgrounds in the United States. Nobody even knew that Family Circle was in the park. Somebody saw it in the magazine and showed it to Dave Herzog. So, you know, to make that magazine was quite a deal, really. And in 1989, the park was a finalist in the President's Take Pride in America awards program. And the Herzogs and the Thompsons all met with the Bushes in Washington, D.C. The Nixon property then was purchased in 2002. This added the old farm trail and the Cundiff Cemetery, and from what we can tell, that was part of Weldon's land, and Dick Maxwell was at my talk, and he had a copy of Lincoln Weldon's will, and his parents lived on that land and farmed it. And I knew about the tombstones on the hill. We had a foundation meeting out there one night, and I told Dave Herzog, and by the next morning, Dave Herzog was out there collecting all those tombstones. Had been over to the Ziegler property too, collecting tombstones, and then that's how the cemetery came about, that's out there on the old farm property. Now there is 550 acres in the park. Veterans Point's out there. It was dedicated October 9, 2005. Another statue a few years later by the foundation. People still buy bricks out there. I'm the treasurer, and we get a lot of money every year from people buying bricks. When Dave did that, he shut it off in 2001, told us nobody else could buy a brick, no matter what. He was not selling any more bricks. Well, my brother died suddenly in 2002 on October 10th, and I asked, and he said okay, he would put my brothers in there because he had been in the military. And he said, well, I have some corners I have to even up. That was it, no more. Okay, by 2005, no more. By 2007, okay. Everybody wants bricks, so you can buy bricks now. Governor Blagojevich closed Weldon Springs on August 28, 2008. Dave Herzog and some people took all the materials out of the schoolhouse. When you give to the schoolhouse, that's on loan. You can take it back. And there were a lot of people wanting those materials. So those materials were put in storage so that they wouldn't all disappear. And on February 26, 2009, Governor Quinn reopened the park. Mary Mitchell Stites and myself went to Springfield and attended the ceremony when they gave us back our park. Because we were not allowed to go to the schoolhouse. We were not allowed to cross the ropes. However, our congressman had proven that the WPA had built part of that and that the cemetery was there, so they did have to open up part of the park. But they didn't have to open up the part where the buildings were, the Texas Township Hall and the schoolhouse. Dave Herzog retired in 2011. He'd been there 35 years. As site superintendent, he had dedicated his life to that park. They had bought a new property out south of town. Dave had been hurt, had fallen down a hill, really, when he worked at Weldon Springs. Well, he had an emergency surgery for gallbladder. Then he had his surgery for from the fall, and he passed away in the night, probably from a blood clot from the two surgeries. He died on March 30th, 2012. We built the Herzog Pier in 2013 in memory of Dave Herzog. It's a handicapped accessible pier. It took quite a while to build that pier, too. Tom Jackson replaced Dave as the site superintendent at that time. And then Carol Thompson, the interpreter, became ill in 2014. It was very, very sudden when they discovered she had the brain tumor. Then she never could come back to the park again. I think one time, and that time the foundation got to meet with her, but that's the only time I ever remember her coming back. And she passed away in 2015. We put up a Purple Martin house in her memory. She had purchased a Purple Martin house before that, so we now have two. She also was the one that donated the wetlands that's behind the schoolhouse. That was in memory of one of her family. Now Charlie Montgomery became the site superintendent, and he's still the site superintendent. They worked on the trails in 2016. We got a lot of support from the businesses in Clinton and the people from Clinton to repair those trails. The buildings had extensive work in 2018. The Boy Scouts went in and cleaned up the Black Locust section, which I didn't even know existed until they cleaned it up. And we put in a bathroom, and it was finished in 2021. That is now a group campground down there. So if a church or Boy Scouts or anybody, you can reserve that group campground. Mary Mitchell Stites was president 2009 to 2020. Dr. Veers donated a lot of money to that park, helped us on about everything we did. Dave Bowman, who was a science teacher at the high school, left us an annuity. So this town has really supported that group. Stephanie is our president now. We had a lot of problems having an interpreter, but we now have Patty Kinder that's in the schoolhouse and the educator at the schoolhouse and works with the kids. She's there from Wednesday through Sunday. Volunteers from the foundation are there Saturday and Sunday, although Stephanie about lives there. She's there every day. So it's all done by volunteers. Charlie, like I said, is the site superintendent. Adrian Harding out at Clinton is the secretary. Jay Wickenhauser is our worker, but there is a seasonal worker and a campground host. The fishing derby's coming up pretty quick, and Patty will talk about that. We have 20 that I'm not sure about now. And they've been doing nature walks out there too. I'll let you come and talk about what you're doing now.
Okay. Just shortly, Norma's kind of covered our history in a nutshell. There's so much more that you can learn. If you come out to Weldon Springs, I love to talk about the history of Weldon Springs, and I know enough to give you something that'll make you happy. We are having a lot of different activities out there. I want to thank, first of all, the Illinois Prairie Community Foundation gave us a grant. We were very blessed to receive it. I'll be buying displays, items that will help teach not only adults but children as well with the money that they've given us. So come out and enjoy the prairie with us this year. And lots going on. We do have a bird walk Father's Day weekend, which is this coming Saturday at 8:30. Bring your kids down and get them registered for the fishing derby. From 9 to 11, the kids will be fishing. Everybody walks away with a prize. My husband grew up here. He went to a fishing derby when he was a child. He still talks about it today. That's how important it is. Other things that have been going on, we had a frog pond event where grandparents and parents brought their kids. We've had bird walks where kids come out. Nature. We're going to have a Art with Nature coming up. Definitely follow us on Facebook if you do Facebook, but I also have a paper here to hand out to everybody, and anybody on camera might have already gotten that page. We are a foundation. I like to tell everybody who comes out, we are a state park, but we have a foundation. The foundation really does cover a lot of stuff that goes on in the park. We do the gardening. We're working on getting a cleaning day. Spring and fall, we definitely need that. We need volunteers to come out to the schoolhouse and nature center to hang out during the weekends. We have a lot of different opportunities, and I want anybody who's interested in becoming a member of the foundation, definitely reach out to us. I have information on that as well. And then we sell t-shirts, so if anybody's interested in that, all that money stays there in the park for educational purposes. Some of the other upcoming events, we have a bug walk, which I think is going to be really cool. This is going to be late though. It's from 8:30 to 9:30 in the evening. That's in August. We have a birding class and walk that's going to be happening in August as well. We have binoculars, so if you don't have any, you can borrow ours. So we have a history event also coming up at the library in September. That's going to be the end of September. Come out to Weldon Springs and share your memories with us. I would love to hear your memories. One of the things I'd like to do possibly next year is to have a picnic, maybe even at the end of this year, have a big, huge picnic, and all of you come and tell your stories of Weldon Springs. My stories of Weldon Springs start in 2017. That's when my husband and I started coming. I have short memories of the park, but I love the park already. I know you folks that have grown up here have so many more memories. So definitely come out and share those with us. Follow us on Facebook. I'm getting information out as much as I can. Help me spread the word. Does anybody have any questions?
Talk about Friday.
Friday?
When Carl's here.
Well, that's with the YMCA. We have Carl Wenning. The YMCA comes out each week, and Carl Wenning is going to be speaking on Friday. He was out last Saturday talking about the night sky. That was really cool. If you're interested in that type of thing, I was possibly thinking about having another event with him that the community can come out to. We had a really good turnout for the first one, and Mr. Wenning is an astronomer from Bloomington. He's also from the Twin Cities Astrological Foundation, and they gave us a really cool telescope, real big one, real nice. So we're really excited about that as well. You had a question?
I'm not on Facebook. Do you have a website?
Yes and no. We're working on getting our website back. So right now, what has happened that if you go to the website, you will get binged to our Facebook page, or we're now on Instagram as well. So we're working on getting a better website together.
If you're not a member of Facebook, you can still see the information.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions? Before you leave, we do have handouts, and we have pictures that you might be interested in looking at, old pictures of Chautauquas, and we also have Chautauqua programs that have been copied. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies. Very interesting.